Richtopia, a world with peace and justice. Richtopia, a world where everyone's rich.
I'm Pippa Malmgren, and I'm an economist and now a manufacturer of aerial robotics, which are commercial drones. My story is I worked in the financial markets for a long time. I was on the trading floors for big institutions like UBS and Bankers Trust. I was the chief currency strategist, the deputy head of global strategy. And during that time, I was really interested in the interface between politics or public policy and markets. And so I started spending a lot of time with politicians and policymakers to understand their thought process. And through that, I kind of gained a reputation for explaining the world economy in plain English. And that's how I ended up getting a phone call from George W. Bush saying, "Would you come brief me?" And I ended up as his economic advisor in the White House and was there during the time we had 9/11 and 7 of the 9 largest bankruptcies in American history in a single year. So that was very exciting. And when I left the White House, I continued to be an economist and try to have a view about what was coming on the landscape that we should be thinking about. And one of the things that I thought was clear was that robotics was coming. And as an economist, you get paid to speak and you get paid to present, you get paid to write, but in the end, it's all you. You have to do all the work. And so I was really keen on finding something where I could create a business that would generate its own cash flow, its own revenue. And so I came together with one of my clients, who's now my business partner, and we created this company, H-Robotics. We're now in our production facility where we're manufacturing commercial drones, which use an unlimited array of sensors and cameras and all sorts of devices. And so it puts us right at the heart of innovation in artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, all sorts of things, which is probably the most beautiful place you could be as an economist. I feel like I have the whole economy right here in my office.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
So for me, being an economic analyst was never about number crunching. I know it mainly is for everybody else, but my view was numbers only capture part of the story. And by definition, the numbers are backward looking. They're about what happened yesterday. And you can't extrapolate them into the future, right? Everybody knows in financial markets, past returns are no indication of future performance. So why would it be true for the economy as a whole? So what I love looking at are the things you can't quantify. That means politics, policy, but also zeitgeist and trends. I love keeping my eyes open for things that are, to me, indicators of how people are feeling. And I think that's part of what's allowed me as an economist to detect some trends that a lot of the traditional mathematical economists kind of miss.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
DRPM was all about providing economic intelligence to investors around the world. And by intelligence, what I mean is it's really my views about what I think is coming on the horizon. And I've had a bit of a history making predictions. Well, I hate saying the word prediction because I don't think you can predict anything, but saying I think we should be better prepared for certain outcomes. So in the financial crisis, I advised all my clients to sell everything. I sold my house, moved my family into rental accommodation. I had such a strong view we were going to have something like the savings and loan crisis, which at the time sounded so dramatic, and everybody was like, I think you may need a vacation. But that only was confirmation I thought I was onto something. And similarly, later, I had a view that all this central bank intervention would ultimately lead to higher inflation, which is exactly what we're seeing, because of course it was the whole point. Things like China having a really serious slowdown, not just a temporary one, but something more existential, which is partly what's caused them to create this new Belt and Road Initiative where they're building global infrastructure. So all these things, for me, is what being an economist and an economic analyst is about. H-Robotics is a manufacturing enterprise, and we make commercial drones. They're designed to be used by big corporations all over the world, and basically it's a stable platform in the sky. You can attach any sensor, any device, any new innovation the market comes up with, and then all the data goes up to a stable platform in the cloud that the client can manage 24/7 in 3 dimensions and look at it in real time or over time.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
It's really interesting, the question of corporate culture. In the companies that I've created, really it's just about everybody working hard to solve the problem at hand. We don't have hierarchies, we don't have reporting lines. We're kind of too small for that, actually. And it's good because everybody brings all their talent and skill. I'm also a big believer in hiring people that are not conventionally educated. So, for example, I tried hiring world-class engineers from the best universities, software engineers, and they can make a drone fly beautifully on a computer screen, not so good at welding metal and making it fly in real life. And what I found is a lot of people are very talented at building that just don't come from a conventional background. So we are very open-minded about who we have on our team.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
Oh, I think the drone industry is going to be absolutely massive, but not in the way people think. I think Amazon has done an unbelievable job of a marketing story by talking about drones delivering, but I don't think actually drones are going to be used for delivery. And there's just no way you're going to be dropping packages on children in suburban neighborhoods. And the dog in the neighborhood's going to jump in the air and grab that thing. I mean, it's just all going to be a mess. So what I do think is drones are about data. And they're about managing very practical problems. Like we work with clients in mining, managing their toxic runoff, managing the valuation of their properties, keeping people from stealing stuff off their properties. We work with oil and gas on their pipelines, detection and deterrence, oil spills, helping to either prevent them or clean them up a lot faster when you have drones. The applications are truly incredible. I think insurance, massive applications in the insurance sector. So people haven't really understood yet what drones are all about. I think the bottom line is it's all about data, not delivery.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
I get asked a lot about being a mentor or what should people do to have mentors, particularly women. Who are still trying to, get to the top and break through the barriers. And my advice is mentors are great and take them when you can find them. But what's much more interesting are tormentors. And tormentors are people who literally torment you. They appear usually when you're having a very big success. And they're usually pretty brutal, right? They'll punch you in lots of ways. And I have to say, when I first encountered this, my first reaction was, oh my gosh, what can I do to make them more friendly with me? How do I placate them? And it took me a little while to learn that actually they are total confirmation that you are succeeding. And it means you're reaching a moment where you are in a boxing match and it is binary. Somebody has to win, somebody has to lose, and it needs to be you that wins. And so when a tormentor appears, my view is like, you should go, excellent, here we go. And that's important to get used to that, because the better you are, the more tormentors are going to appear.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
Oh, I have a pretty strong view about crypto, which is that it's real and it's not going away. I think there's an age issue. Some friends of mine were at the conference where Jamie Dimon famously said that it's all a fraud. And they pointed out that everyone in that room over the age of 50 was like, it's a fraud. And everybody under the age of 50 is like, I'm all in. There's a generational issue with this. But I think there's something to the idea that the internet will compel us to change the way we think about money. And it is creating its own new forms of money. Crypto is one of them. Now, governments are going to have cryptocurrencies as well. So it won't only be private entities. But the foundational technology underneath it, which is called blockchain, is only getting better every day. And bottom line is, governments are going to love this because once everything's electronic, there's no more black economy. So they'll actually have better tax flows, smarter use of the money, it'll be much more efficient. So I think it's for real.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
I think everyone is paying attention to what's the impact of the choices that I make, particularly with regard to the planet. I think it's really interesting how people make these decisions. Some of it's about environmental issues. Some of it's about how human beings are treated. I was really impressed recently by BlackRock's announcement that they are not going to invest in any companies that don't have at least 2 women on the board of directors. I'm like, hey, that's a powerful statement. That's a much more powerful announcement than any government mandated outcome could possibly be.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
Ooh, well, I think drones are one of them. What we've created is effectively a blockchain-ready audit tool. And so we're working with accounting firms to make sure the data gets uploaded automatically into pre-established audit trails. I think blockchain is frankly going to be for everything. Let me give you my most controversial view about this. People think of blockchain as being a place where transactions are uploaded. That's the least of it. It's going to upload every action that you take, every physical movement that you make. When you get out of bed, there's sensors in your house that are detecting your movement. You know, the vacuum cleaner in your house is going to broadcast when did you step into the kitchen, your kettle, I mean, everything. And it will also capture your emotional reactions. So when you were watching your big video screen at home, yeah, guess what? It's watching you. And it's recording your microfacial movements and gathering unbelievable insight as to how to advertise to you. This is only possible in a blockchain world where these huge amounts of data can be uploaded into some kind of structure. And there are new versions of blockchain coming out every day that are even faster, process faster. So I think it's a pretty profound change that I often say we're entering a holographic universe. It's almost a new dimension of reality. So imagine blockchain is the foundation for capturing all of that data and creating almost like a visual image of reality in data form that's more realistic than reality. And that data sphere is like a crystal ball, and you will be able to conjure forth answers. If you ask it questions, it will tell you stuff. It will also look at you and tell the world what you're like, and it will know more about you than you do. So I think a big skill that we're going to need to develop is how to manage this holographic data sphere. And in fact, I have a new book coming out, and I've got a whole chapter that's just on that. It's on leadership in the 21st century, because the 20th century thinking cannot handle a holographic data sphere. That's a 21st century phenomena.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
I would love to hang out with Marshall McLuhan. That guy has completely blown my mind. I've been reading his stuff and listening to his video lectures, and you know, he wrote this famous book, The Message is the Medium, where he basically says it's not the content of what comes at you, it's the medium that you use, whether it's television or whether it's auditory, or you read a book, or you read an illuminated manuscript, that the method actually determines your thought process. So I'd love to hang with him for a while. Who else would I love to hang out with? My God, the list is so unbelievably long, it's a bit scary. Richard Feynman, the scientist, oh my God, I think that guy was just such a genius. I don't know if you ever read actually it's a video, YouTube video. It's a kind of ode to a daisy, where he talks about the beauty of a daisy in its subatomic structures. I mean, absolutely mind-blowing. And, you know, I actually am more interested in people who are artists. I think artists are better at both comprehending and explaining what's happening in our world than any political leader. In a way, I'd rather hang out with President Kennedy's speechwriters than with the president. I'm sure President Kennedy must have been absolutely fascinating, but his speechwriters were incredible. So I don't know, my list is just ridiculously long, and I read a lot, so I have so many authors that I would love to meet.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
Now we have so many sensors in space, right? We've gone formally interstellar. We are seeing images of our planet and others that are so really precise and telling us so much about the world. What it does do is it challenges our notions of authority here on this planet. Because people start to say, well, the science was wrong. And if science was wrong, then they're going to question everything else. And I think it's really an important moment in history. We have to decide how we think about science. One way is science is a body of knowledge. And that's how it's taught in schools. And you learn the body of knowledge. Another way is science is a way of asking questions. And I think that method makes a lot more sense. And we're going to be asking a lot of questions. And so the questions about extraterrestrials comes up in that context. Everybody's asking questions.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
Again, I find in the world of economics, people think it's all about math, numbers, models, data. And a lot of it is, but I don't think it gets you the answer that you want. And it's pretty clear we keep being blindsided by events. The numbers are wrong. The projections, our forecasts are terrible. So my view is, okay, keep your data, use that, fine, but also open your eyes. Literally, instead of being blind in one eye and only looking at the world through a mathematical lens, open the other eye and see all the common sense things that are right in front of you. So for example, I've been banging on now for a few years about the return of inflation, well before it was showing up in any of the statistics. And people are like, you're crazy, it's not in the data. And I'm like, yeah, but have you noticed that when you open the box of cereal in the morning that there's less and less inside, but you're paying the same price? Have you noticed that the candy bars keep getting smaller, but you're paying the old price? They go, yeah, I totally noticed that. Do you notice that the beer, down at the bar, it's getting more expensive? In fact, they come up with new sizes for beers that are smaller, or Coke cans get smaller. All this is telling you that companies are facing input pressures, and so they're trying to find a way to charge you more without you noticing. So I call that shrinkflation. And this is one way you can begin to see, there's an awful lot of that going on. Probably that is an early indicator that inflation is coming, because eventually, you can't have only 4 potato chips in the bag, right? It's just ridiculous. So eventually you're going to get a price hike. And that's exactly what has started to happen. So now the data says, oh my goodness, we have inflation. And we're all surprised. You could have seen it coming with your eyes open. So that's one example of what I mean by look around, open your ears. I talk to a lot of chief executives. And they say, well, the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England say that there's no big inflation problem. I said, yeah, but you should talk to your staff and ask how many of them are having trouble paying their rent. And you will find that in every income bracket in your company, they are struggling because rents are rising very rapidly in many parts of the world. And they come back and say, you're right. Oh my goodness. So this is what I mean. Another way of thinking about it too with signals is a signal is a hint about the future that's not yet in the data. So it doesn't mean it's a fact, but it means it may be worthy of your attention.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
Oh, it mainly excites me. It's interesting. People are very pessimistic right now. My view is we've had a couple hundred years of very persistent automation and shift to robotics. And what is the end result of that 200 years? Record level employment. Okay, so this idea that automation and robotics will steal our jobs has not been true. Will it be true in future? Well, I'm making them. I'm right in the middle of this space. And what I see is that robotics, artificial intelligence, automation are augmenting human beings. They are not replacing human beings. There is one area where we will see a shift, and that is manual labor. So people go, well, this is terrible. We have all these Indian and Pakistani laborers, and they're lifting heavy bags of rice, and we will deprive them of a job. My view is it's a bad job. We don't want human beings doing things that don't require any intelligence. So let the robotics do the heavy lifting, and then invest in the intellectual human capital that you have in all those people. And then everybody goes, oh, well, they can't be educated. And I say, well, then you're a snob and you're an elitist, because who knows what incredible genius is there in that community. We just haven't cultivated it yet. And so I love this company, Andela. It would be on my closest company to watch in 2018 list. It is a company backed by Mark Zuckerberg, and what they do is create coders in places like Nigeria, Uganda, Kenya. So they are basically building the mathematical computing coding talent. And why? Because all the coders in Bangalore and Silicon Valley became too expensive, another sign of, rising prices. So they went, well, there's got to be a cheaper community. And they go, yeah, Africa, let's go to Africa. Well, guess what? They're producing women and men coders that are absolutely world-class. That company already has $1 billion valuation. And what does it tell us? It tells us if we invested in the human capital anywhere, Oklahoma, middle of England, Nigeria, it doesn't matter. You will find this talent is already there.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
I am very optimistic that the human condition is going to be improved very dramatically. I've talked about this data sphere that we're entering, this new dimension of reality. This is where we will be solving cancer, curing diseases, having vastly more efficient physical systems from traffic management to waste management. This is where we're going to profoundly change how we do things. We're going to be able to provide people with goods and services that are much more tailored to their specific situation. I see job creation across the board. We're going to have entirely new fields of endeavor. People go, oh, well, what new sectors could possibly be invented? And I'm like, the interesting thing is nobody knows. But I can tell you just the last 3 or 4 years, suddenly we have a whole vertical in the production of marijuana. It's just a whole new business with thousands and thousands of people employed. We have a whole new vertical in the world of cryptocurrencies and blockchain. Tens of thousands of people employed all over the world that 10 years ago, if you'd said blockchain, everybody would have said, what? What is that? And that's the exciting thing. What will be in 2030? We haven't even heard the name of it today, but I'm very confident it will exist. We're going both directions. The public right now is very focused on the interspatial direction, right? We're going to go to outer space. But we're also going into nanospace, right? That's the other direction. And I think as we move in both directions, unbelievable discoveries are going to be made. I also think that the amount of money that's being spent on that will generate all kinds of secondary, tertiary technologies and results that will be very valuable. So I totally get it. And let's face it, we are in a space race in the realm of geopolitics. We have China, the United States, Russia, India to a degree, all engaged in a massive new space race. And they are all aiming at colonizing planets. So this isn't airy-fairy anymore. It's a very real undertaking that's happening right now.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
I've always taken a strong interest in public policy. I grew up in politics. My dad served 4 presidents, so I grew up in the middle of all that. He was the chief trade negotiator for the United States, so I grew up understanding that whole world of public policy and why it matters. And so one bit of advice I have is whatever your field of endeavor is, it's not enough to be successful in that field. You also have to think about what is the impact on everybody else. I like the saying that Peter Drucker had, which is it's not enough to be profitable. You have to be profitable. If you're not, you're going to get chucked out. But in addition to being profitable, what's the social purpose that your organization serves? Because if it doesn't have one, it won't ever have any loyalty, it won't have a brand, it won't have any followership. So I really think that everybody should be thinking about what's the public policy consequence of my activities. And heaven knows, if the banking sector had been thinking that way, we might not have had a financial crisis as severe as we did. So that's one thing, is to just constantly be aware of the consequences of what you're doing professionally. I also think that it's smart to change sides, to spend some time in what government calls the private sector, which I kind of find funny because it makes it sound small, and what the private sector calls the public sector. So anytime you have a chance to have a foot in both camps or hop back and forth, I say definitely do that.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
Oh, the next 10 years. Well, I'm raising a 14-year-old daughter, so my highest priority is that, she turns out well, and thank goodness so far she is. We have this kind of strange relationship where she says to me, "Mom, you're not eating enough spinach." And I'm like, a little chocolate now and again wouldn't hurt you. So we kind of reversed, which is really fun. Anyway, that's my highest priority. I am building this company, H-Robotics, and the intention is to turn it into a really serious global player. I think we are already there, but we're not well known yet, but we're staking out our claim. My goal is to continue to be involved in public policy, which I am, to talk about what's happening in the world economy in a way that gets people excited and engaged instead of depressed and morose. It's insane to be thinking the future is going to be worse when we have so much innovation. I mean, we are in the midst of an industrial revolution on a scale that has never been seen before. So I guess part of my job over the next decade is just to be a bit of a cheerleader and it's going to be fine, it's going to be good, and it's going to do a lot of good things.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
Well, I'm always asked about what I'm reading, and I think I'm the person who keeps all the out-of-print booksellers in business. I literally love the stuff that you just can't get your hands on anymore. So my favorite book by Peter Drucker, which inspired the book I wrote, Signals, is called The End of Economic Man. He wrote it in 1939, and he predicted World War II. I have to say, it was his greatest work of genius, but no one quotes it anymore because they know him as a business guy, so they quote all his business books. But that book was a very broad outlook explaining why we were sleepwalking our way into conflict. And I think there are a lot of parallels with today. 2018, we're on mark to hit record all-time high military spending. It will be the highest level since the Cold War. And while I don't predict that we're going to have conflict, I do predict we're going to have confrontation. And we are having confrontations, and they are important for markets to manage. The geopolitics is alive and well. So that's one book that helps you get a better grip on all that. I really think that this book, The Message is the Medium, by Marshall McLuhan, is completely mind-blowing and will change the way you think about the world. And again, I really recommend reading fiction and novels because they exercise the imagination. And one of my strongest messages is that the businesses that will succeed are the ones that can tell their story. And this is why a lot of tech companies are now hiring an actual chief storyteller. And I recently wrote an article with a friend of mine who was the chief storyteller for NASA called Why Scientists and Why Tech People Need Better Storytelling. Storytelling is not a sideline. It's a core skill. The best story is the one that's going to win. Not the best product, not the best idea. It's the best ability to convey the story and get people excited about it.
Richtopia, a world with peace and justice.
So these are the drones that my company, H-Robotics, makes. We call this HiSight, and it's basically a platform. It's a place where you can put any camera, any sensor, any device, any new innovation the market comes up with, and all the data goes up into a stable platform in the cloud where you can overlay it with any software, any new innovation in software. And the good thing is we built it to be a very rugged tool. It's meant to be chucked around on industrial sites, mines, rigs, in terrible weather conditions. That's what this is designed for. And pretty robust. We can drop this thing from about 100 feet and it doesn't break. Even if it did, though, the thing is the arms snap on and off. So if you manage to break something, and we insure it 100%, but if you do, you just take the arm off and snap a new one on. So in the end, what you've got is really, in a world full of toys, most of the drones we look at are toys, this is an industrial tool. And I think its capacity to change how business gets done is really incredible. We see already extraordinary cost savings happening to companies that are using aerial data. So anyway, this is my contribution to the world economy. As an economist, you get to talk about the world economy, but this is about building the world economy, and I'm really psyched about that.